Welcome, everyone, to the Fantasy Phoenix podcast, here to give you tips for NBL SuperCoach. Let's jump in and review round 9 of BBL SuperCoach. Sorry, NBL. I just got so confused after McCall turned up. Thanks to his monster score as our captain, we scraped out a 4.44 that pushed us back into the top 150 overall at 143rd. I took the risky option / the longer term play of fading the Kings guys and bringing in Source a week early. That was great. Our other trade in of Roberts was not so great, with Adam Ford baiting me into starting him for his miserable score of 13. Despite that, we managed to hold top spot of both the open and head-to-head leagues of the Podmasters Cup. Make sure to be following along on Twitter or X or Instagram, wherever you get your socials, to see our progress and see if we can hold on. As a little bit of a side note too, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you probably noticed that there's no face cam at the moment. I have recently come down with COVID and am quite sick, so I'm pushing through the best I can for the vocal side of things, but you probably don't want to see me in the state that I'm in at the moment. But I guess for those listening on Spotify, that makes zero difference to you. So moving on, there's lots of big news to unpack. Just before the start of the round, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix parted ways with Will Cummings for his off-court, let's call it, commitments. It was very unexpected, but they haven't wasted any time in finding a replacement. Abdel Nader was named as the new import. Now, this guy is a 200-game NBA journeyman. He's a 3-and-D style kind of guy. Looks like they're getting him in to replace Cummings with that offensive and the three-point shooting that they've been lacking a bit, but also that defense that they're going to lose with Moller. So this signing seems to be a great fit for them, and maybe they had it lined up before they let Cummings go. How it's going to affect the team is yet to be seen though, but it could be quite interesting for SuperCoach. Mick Randall's reported that he is arriving in town on Thursday. He'll sit out that match against United, but there's a good chance that he gets at least some minutes against the Hawks, so watch this space there. We've got a couple extra teams on doubles this week, with 4 in total: Cairns, Melbourne, Tassie, and Southeast Melbourne. All of them have doubles next round as well, aside from Melbourne, so we have lots of players to target for our teams. With that in mind, let's have a look at some players to potentially trade in or out in our buy, sell, keep, and avoid segment. Buy are players that I think are good options to trade in if you don't already have them. Sell are players that I think are options to trade out if you do own them. Keep are players that are being traded out, but I think you should consider keeping. And avoid are players that are being traded in, but I think you should consider avoiding. Here's how our options from last week went. Our buy in McCall had a monster week. The first player to crack the elusive ton, and he went up nearly 60k in the process. Our sell in the New Zealand boys had 41 and 28 respectively, and had a net gain of around 20,000. Our keep Will Magnay had a great game of 38 and went up 40k, and our avoid Lockie Olbrich had a lowly 4 and gained a small amount of cash. I'm going to call all of those big ticks. Let's see if we can back it up. Moving on to this week, our buy. Jordan Crawford. With the unfortunate situation that Milton Doyle is in, shout out and our thoughts are with him and his family at this time, his availability is still under question for the JJs. With Doyle out, Crawford is the number 1 beneficiary. 40 in a hot scoring game last week and back-to-back doubles coming up. Crawford is someone very much to consider bringing into your side. As a side note though, if Doyle is back in time for this round and is fit and named to play full minutes, especially in both games, he's also a great option for 30 grand less. Sell. Josh Roberts. Now, there's probably some other guys that you could move on, but if you're fairly set up for your starters and you have a spare trade to use this week, the fool's gold in Roberts is one to consider moving on. Wardenberg looked to be back in form and actually contributing quite well on the defensive end, so it's hard to see Roberts breaking back into that rotation. If he has a similar week to last week, he will lose all of the cash he made and have another break even above what his output has been so far for the following week. I made the move in and I'm potentially boosting to get him out. More on that later. Keep. Jonah Bolden. To be completely honest, there wasn't anyone on the list of the top trade outs that I disagreed with. Bolden is probably the one of the lot to consider holding on to though. The Kings have a good run after this week with 3 doubles in the next 4, including the very important round 14. He is going to toe the line a bit with his break even, and if he's your way to get in source, you can definitely move him on. Otherwise, if you've got the luxury to keep him on your bench, I'd definitely consider holding on. And our avoid, Fabian Chrich. Over 300 coaches have brought in the jack jumper with a solid score and a low break even. I don't think he's who to go for. Yes, he is very cheap, but the 22 is his highest round score of the year, and that's including doubles. This is mostly due to Marcus Lee sitting for most of the game. If you need a heartbeat on the bench, you might be okay doing it, but I'd be staying away from any Tassie big man that's not named Will Magnay. Some very high scoring players on the double this week, so there's quite a few options for captaincy. The top 4 guys I would have are Mitch Creek, Alan Williams, Tajir McCall, and JLA, with some honourable mentions to Crawford and Miller as well. Source is most likely going to be the most captain player this week and next week, for good reason. He hasn't gone under 30 in any game, and he has really started to get going. His biggest problem, and his only problem to be completely honest, is his fouling. If he keeps that in check, he's on for another big one here. Last week we saw the most captain player blown out of the water by Tajir McCall. Could he do it again? Creek is the main man for the Phoenix on the offensive end, and he should keep that going. JLA is a bit of a smoky. With their schedule, he's definitely going to be the lesser owned out of all these guys, and if you're taking the punt on him over Source, giving him the R-band is a great shout as well. Trades last week were a bit risky. I went into the week thinking that I was going to have 2 Kings players, and I ended up with 0. That's because, as I mentioned earlier, I decided to go for Source a week early by moving on Wardenberg. The fact that he was playable for 5 weeks in a row despite singles was the deciding factor. I also didn't want to fall short of being able to avoid him this week. To fund that though, was Josh Roberts in for Bannon. In hindsight, I still would have done that trade as it gave me the funds to make that Source move. I just wish I didn't play him on field. For this week, I'm looking at Lamb to Creek and PJC to Crawford or Gary Brown. If Milton Doyle is back for both games, I'll probably actually roll the dice with him as he's the lowest price of those 3 guys. There's also the potential that I'll boost for Josh Roberts to get him out for either Ben Ayre or Matt Kenyon, but the new Phoenix import does throw a bit of a spanner into that plan. Hopefully we know all of that information before lockout and I can make a decision, but my safety net move, if Doyle isn't playing, is going to be Crawford or Brown, and we're just going to lock in that move and stick Roberts on the bench and hope that he doesn't drop too much in cash. As always, I'll post the final moves on X, so make sure you're following to keep up to date if you aren't already at FantasyPhoenix_. Thank you to everyone that reaches out, drops comments, likes on either on X, on YouTube, wherever you are. It's all really appreciated. And if you haven't already, if you could drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel. Obviously all free and helps us out a lot. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much to everyone for listening or watching. Sorry again about the no face scam, but hopefully we'll be feeling back fit and firing next week and everything will be all back to normal. Good luck everyone for round 11, and more importantly, we're now at the halfway point of the season, so good luck for the second half of the year, and we'll see you in the next episode.